What is up, my beautiful family and friends? Wow, you guys, it has been a half of a year. I mean, I started this podcast, I think, back in July, and I never really expected anybody to listen except for like family friends that I force fed them. Like, here's my podcast, you have to listen to it if you love me, kind of thing. But it's so cool to have some of you just from different places in the world, and I've gotten to know a few of you guys, and that has been amazing to me. It is so cool to hear where you guys are from and your thoughts. And it's so cool to just get to know you guys and you to get to know me. So, we are in December. I am so thankful for you guys. And I want these next few episodes to be about you guys and your traditions. And right now I'm kind of looking on the creepy or dark side of traditions focused around Christmas and the holidays or the month of December. And I've done some research on these and we're going to talk about them. So definitely reach out and send me. I'm your host, Kitty Gonzalez, and you're listening to What the Psychology. So y'all, school is almost over for, the semester. And I'm currently in 5 classes, as you guys should know. I think I've mentioned that. And 3 out of 5 of those I'm already done for the semester. One of them, I just have an exam, and then the other is like discussion posts and a activity or assignment. So I'm really taking this time to enjoy my free time a little bit and try to focus on the podcast more and planning for some time with family for the holidays. So I'll still try to give you some episodes, but I can't promise anything yet because I don't know what that's going to look like. So today it was actually pretty warm, which was great. Usually it's snowing by now. Living in Nebraska, it gets very cold. But usually our winters start a little bit later anyways. But today was so nice and warm, I was able to take the motorcycle out for a ride. And gosh, it just felt so amazing. It feels so freeing. I posted pictures on social media. Yeah, I just had such a wonderful time. It's kind of like therapy for me, besides like real therapy. Alright, so let's dive into some Christmas and holiday things. So one of the first things I want to talk about is my husband. Now, my husband and I, we have been married for 3 years. Yeah. And we've been together for 7 years, right? So we've known each other for a long time, but I feel like I still learned something new about him every day. Like the other day, we were out getting food. We're getting fried chicken and some sides. Very healthy, right? But he just really wanted fried chicken, and I was like, okay. We both been going to the gym, so it's okay. And we decided to have mashed potatoes and mac and cheese. I was like, well, do you like gravy on your mashed potatoes? Because, sorry if you're offended, but personally, I don't really like gravy. And he's like, well, sometimes I like a little bit, but I'm not really a big fan of gravy. And I was just like, what? I never knew this about you. And yeah, I feel like I learned something new. But no, you would think that other things like holidays are very important, or celebrations and culture. But I just found out like a couple of days ago, a tradition in Guatemala. So that's the first thing we're going to talk about. Every year on 7 December, in Guatemala, they have a tradition of what they call burning of the devil. In Spanish, that's La Quema del Diablo. And usually it takes place around like 6 p.m. And so families, they make bonfires on the street in front of their houses. And they burn the image of the devil. But usually they'll have like a huge piñata and they'll bring it out on the street where everyone can see it. And they'll set it on fire. So now this is actually a religious tradition that symbolizes the end of evil. So the devil being consumed by fire is a purifying element because the devil represents darkness and evil. And the religion in Guatemala is pretty split even. About 45% are Catholic, 42% are Protestant, 11% have no religious affiliation, and then the remaining 2% is indigenous or other religions. But pretty heavy, most are either Catholic or Protestant. So they have the belief of heaven and hell for the most part. So there are records that show that this tradition has been around since the 18th century. And it is to, of course, purify the home and keep off evil spirits. But nowadays, it's just kind of like another reason to party. And usually, so they'll bring this big piñata or like shape of a devil, and it's supposed to look a certain way. And they'll bring it to the center of the town or like the city entrance, and that's where they'll burn it in front of everyone. Some say that it's a preparatory holiday in anticipation of the Christmas season, but I actually asked my husband about that, and he said, I don't know, we just kind of do it. So that was kind of my thought was, well, I mean, Christmas is around the corner. Is it to ward off evil from not interfering in Christmas or whatever, you know? And he's like, I don't know, we just celebrate it. But I think that really depends on if you're Catholic or Protestant. Because another tradition for the Catholics is that on December 8th, they have a feast for the Virgin of the Immaculate Conception. They say that's when Mary conceived Jesus, but honestly, that doesn't make sense because that ain't 9 months. But, I mean, we all know that in the Christian world, we celebrate Christmas to celebrate the birth of Jesus. But we all know that it wasn't actually in December. It wasn't during that time of the year when he was actually born. So this just might be a celebratory holiday to just celebrate the fact that he was conceived. That's just my thinking. I'm not an expert, and my husband didn't really know the answer to that because he's not a Catholic. He wasn't raised Catholic. So some of the tradition of burning of the devil is that the devil's, quote, will is read. And this is kind of what it says. He leaves his greed to a wealthy local merchant and his manipulative skills to a prominent local politician, drawing hoots and guffaws from the crowd. Officials are rarely named, says Rudy Giron, an Antigua resident and editor of AntiguaDailyPhoto.com, but everyone knows whom the devil is talking about. It's humor, double-meaning speech, making sure people know who's being criticized without actually calling names. That makes sense. In early traditions, those that could afford it, they would adorn the front of their houses with lanterns, but because the poor could not afford it, they would just gather garbage and they would burn all of their year's rubbish in front of their houses to still celebrate the time of burning the devil. So then over time, to kind of bring everyone together and make it equal, it was formalized, and in addition, they would just burn garbage or have fire pits, which would burn in the communities, and that's pretty much how that tradition continued. So it is said that Guatemalans have long believed that the devil lurks in the dark and dusty corners of the house and in garbage, and that's why they celebrate this holiday. People sweep him out of their houses and chase him off by burning their household refuse, by burning their garbage and bonfires, topped by lookings of the devil. And then there's also like marimba bands and fireworks that add to the festivities. And some of the biggest celebrations are in Antigua and in the capital of Guatemala City. In Ciudad Vieja, a devil 3 stories high is set alight in the city square at the stroke of 6. And that's just one of the 196 unusual happenings described in the Lonely Planet Guide of a Year of Festivals. So they're mentioned in different articles and things like that. before the internet and before us being exposed to other cultures. This and a lot of other research that I've done, I don't think I would have ever known about. And it's funny because I was thinking of things to talk about in the podcast around the holidays. And then literally on the 8th, my husband's like, you know what yesterday was? I'm like, December 7th? He's like, yeah, it's a big deal in Guatemala. I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, yeah, we burned the devil. I'm like, what? And so he was just telling me about it, and nowadays it's not as serious as they took, I guess, back in. Some people probably do still take it very seriously, but it's just kind of another reason to celebrate, and I guess in an attempt to ward off evil and look at the darker side of things, kind of like Halloween, before we jump into the holiday season. And I joked with my husband, I'm like, well, why didn't we celebrate? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, we could have just burned it out in our little cul-de-sac. Like, he just shook his head and laughed at me. Like, no, we're not doing that. People would probably think we're crazy. Just burning trash in the street. Like, what are y'all doing? All right, so the next one that we are going to talk about is kind of the more common known ones from other countries, which is Krampus. At least that's how we pronounce it. And I know that this is known in Europe, mostly in Austria, Slovenia, Croatia, northern Italy, and I think in other places of Europe as well, but those are like the top listed for some reason. And a lot of us in America have heard of Krampus. We're always kind of just like, that ain't the Christmas spirit, but I don't know. We're going to talk about the U.S. a little bit too. So, of course, here in the United States, we know the tale about St. Nicholas, but we don't celebrate Krampus. Now it's kind of more known. So that's what I think is very interesting, because it says that part of Santa's entourage is a shady character named Krampus. And he's a demon with massive horns whose main job is to drag naughty children to hell. So apparently Santa doesn't really want to know if you've been naughty. So a few weeks before Christmas, he'll send Krampus around to weed out the bad children. For minor offenses, Krampus, he might choose to simply beat the child with a bundle of sticks. Sounds like some of y'all's parents, right?
Go outside and get a switch.
But if they've been especially bad, however, they're tossed in a sack and brought straight to
hell.
And just for your information, Krampus begins watching you the moment you're born, as is evidenced by images of the demon taking flocks of presumably naughty infants away to some horrid fate. Now let me ask a few of y'all that are in Europe, have any of y'all been drugged to hell by Krampus? Now I know that sounds kind of silly. All of these traditions are kind of fun, some are creepy. Some are just really jolly, like Santa's really jolly and things like that. And it's a way for kids to celebrate and be good and have something to look forward to. But I feel like even in the U.S., as though as our belief around Christmas isn't as extreme, I guess, as Krampus, we tell kids here in the U.S. that they will get a lump of coal on Christmas. But I feel like that's not really bad enough for kids to behave. I don't know. I feel like you can do a lot with coal, and maybe I'm just like the person that's always optimistic. Like, with coal, I can make fire. I can burn the devil with some coal, right? I can set fire to things. I can use it as like chalk. And maybe that's what got me in trouble as a kid, is I would look at things sometimes more optimistic, like, you're gonna get coal if you're bad, okay? Like, I can use some coal, like, there's things I can do with coal. Like, I can be more naughty with coal. I can draw on the walls. Oh, man. Oh, so Krampus is where it's at, you guys. I'm gonna tell my kids that. But here in the U.S., and I don't know if it's only popular in the U.S., but now a new tradition that we have is Elf on the Shelf. And it's kind of like hypocritical but funny in the sense of it mocks children, because it's like the elf is always watching you, right? And is reporting back to Santa. to tell if you've been good or bad. However, the elf gets into mischief, and it's kind of like mocking the kids, like, oh, I can do mischievous things and not get in trouble, but you can. But I guess if you're working for the big guy, you can get away with that, right? Alright, so next we're going to talk about Iceland. And I don't think I have any listeners from Iceland, but maybe one day I'll get some and they can celebrate that I'm talking about them and I guess their creepy traditions. And there's some of these words are like Icelandic, and you guys already know I'm bad enough at English, so give me some grace when I try to pronounce like some of their words. So one of the things that they have is Gryla, 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 and it's a giant ogre who lives in a cave. And during Christmas, she emerges to hunt for children, which she then kidnaps, takes to her cave, and cooks in a vat of stew. Wow. That sounds like Hansel and Gretel stuff. Man, Gryla was the original witch in the candy, whatever. I don't even remember Candy House. Wasn't it a Candy House in Hansel and Gretel? I don't know. Yeah, sorry. Miss Gryla, she has a lot of companions. And I think that's what's different is, in Europe you have Krampus and Santa. So Krampus is like the bad one, right? But in Iceland, they have like a bunch. Okay, so, and Gryla's the ogre. And she has companions. She has the Yule Lads, which are her 13 unruly troll children / large adult sons. We're going to talk about them in a minute. And the Yule Cat, or Jólakötturinn. I don't know if I said that right, but... So now, in the days leading up to Christmas, the Yule Lads were said to appear for the sole purpose of making children's lives more difficult. Okay, like, y'all, I understand watching children, making sure they're behaving, but now they have creatures that are making their lives hard. So the Yule Lads, they are descendants of monsters. Each of these 13 creatures had a unique method for wreaking havoc. One might steal milk and farm animals, whereas another would remove all light sources from a room, leaving traumatized children in total darkness. Alright, so they would like to wreak havoc and stuff. And you know what's unique? I know in places like Ireland and Scotland, they believe in fairies, which are kind of similar. Like in our own perspective, we see fairies kind of more like Tinkerbell, like maybe a little moody but nice and will help. But in Ireland and Scotland, they have fairies for different things and they're not always nice. So maybe that's something we'll talk about in another episode. We'll see. But I don't think they're really Christmas themed. They're kind of an all the time thing. So who knows? Maybe one day we'll cover that. So as unsettling as the Yule Lads were, the group's pet is much worse. So the lads were followed around by a ferocious cat whose diet consisted entirely of children. This is the Yule Cat. So unlike Krampus, this cat doesn't care if you've been naughty or nice. It's hungry for whatever it can get its teeth on. You guys, what's with these creatures, man? Are y'all trying to traumatize your children? Okay, so while we're kind of on the subject of Santa and his origins, there's also a Yule Goat. But now the Yule Goat is slightly different than like the Yule Cat because this is a Finnish legend. So the Yule Goat is similar to the Yule Cat. This was a figure that was a supernaturally endowed gnome who rode atop some sort of beast from out of the north to demand gifts from people, and if they failed to cough up, he'd wreak all sorts of horrific mayhem. So somehow or another, this monster seems to have morphed into the jolly fat guy we know today. That's the Finnish legend. So they think that the Yule Goat became Santa. And of course, like we talked about the Yule Lads and the ogres, that's from Iceland, which isn't far off. So what is really cool is if you look at every country, or I wouldn't even say every country, but different regions, a lot of them believe in Santa as children, but their version of Santa is different. I remember when I was in elementary school, we had to do a Christmas Around the World project, and we were assigned to a country, and we had to learn what their version of Santa was like. And that's kind of interesting too. Like in America, we believe that Santa has reindeer, but other countries believe that it's like a sleigh of dogs. So it really just depends. But it seems like a lot of people believe in Santa, and then there's some darker side of it. Like we believe that you're going to get coal, or like the evil elf is watching you. Alright, so for my Austria and Bavaria folks, which is cool. I know I have ancestors from Bavaria, or that lived in Bavaria. And this is Frau Perchta. And I believe Frau means woman. I think it's woman. I started taking German a little bit. Yeah, some props for, if I'm right, for remembering that. So, Frau Perchta is a witch who comes to see who has been naughty or nice. She slits the bellies of bad children and stuffs their corpses with straw. Wow. So it's sort of like Santa bringing coal, but with disembowelment instead. Lordy, y'all, that's so dark. I mean, y'all are really trying to get y'all kids to behave, and I don't have kids yet, but I've seen some people's kids. I can understand. Man, that's really dark. Like, you better be good or they're gonna cut you open. Wow. Okay, so now this one is Greece, Bulgaria, Serbia, and Turkey. This is the Kallikantzari. And these are goblins who spend most of the year underground trying to bring about the apocalypse. During Advent, they come out onto human territory to cause mischief and evil. They are sometimes described as black fury creatures with tusks and horns. They are usually male and...
Wow.
I'm reading this, so wow. They're usually male and grotesquely well endowed. And I hope I don't have to explain what that means, but just look up the word endowed if you don't know what that means. Woo! Okay, so then the next one that I have is Père Fouettard, which is France, Belgium, and Switzerland. And I'm really sorry if my pronunciation is whack, because it is. I can pronounce Spanish pretty well, but you get into other languages, I'm sorry, it's just like that, y'all. So Père Fouettard
was a butcher.
He and his wife kidnapped, robbed, and killed wealthy children, then carved up their bodies and hid them in salting barrels. St. Nicholas discovered the crime and brought the children back to life. As punishment, he forced Père Fouettard into bondage as his eternal cannibal manservant. So he follows St. Nick around, dealing with the problem children. Whatever dealing with that problem children means, it does say cannibal, so...
I'm just assuming he's eating the little children.
Okay, so that's gonna wrap it up for this episode. If there's anything else that in your country you guys believe in, or kids believe in, let me know and I can bring it up in the podcast. Maybe give you a shout out. I'm your host, Kitty Gonzalez, and you've been listening to What the Psychology.
Stay safe, y'all!
Merry Christmas, you filthy animal. And a Happy New Year.